morning, everyone. I'm Larry Kudlow. Welcome back to the Kudlow Report, where we still believe free market capitalism is the best path to prosperity. Topic A tonight. We've got a real mortgage mess on our hands, as you know. Today, the attorneys general in all 50 states have launched a joint investigation into home foreclosures, seeking an immediate halt to any improper practices at banks and mortgage companies. In just a moment, we're going to talk with Florida State Attorney General Bill McCollum, who was right in the thick of this heated debate. But first up, let's turn to Washington. CNBC's Diana Olick joins us with the full rundown on the meltdown. Hello, Diana.
Hello, Larry. You know, you can argue and investigate the robo-signing all you want, but it's what the robo-signing may be covering up that's really the biggest issue for banks and mortgage investors going forward. At issue is, bottom line, who owns the loans? Who holds the mortgage, the note on the mortgage, and the securities into which the mortgages were bundled? Real estate law is governed by the state, so it's going to vary state to state. But in general, a mortgage has two parts, the mortgage and the note. The note is the IOU, the borrower's promise to repay the debt. The mortgage is the document that says the house is the collateral for the note. The note is crucial because there is your evidence of the debt. It's supposed to be held by a trust. Otherwise, the debt doesn't exist, right? Well, now to the securitization. Take a look at the chart. Bundling all these mortgages and buying and selling them. Here's the chain of how it's supposed to work. From you, the borrower, to the originator, the depositor who bundles it as a security, and the final resting place, the trust and the security that relies on that trust. But about a decade ago, the banks, including Fannie and Freddie, created this electronic system. They call it MERS, which acts as a representative of the banks. It's actually just right outside D.C., and it's supposedly keeping all the records of the changes in ownerships. But in all that, the actual notes and the mortgages are lost, and according to the law, you need those to foreclose. So you've got this huge mess right there, and the big question is, how long is it going to take to sort it out? Experts are telling me it could take up to a year, but that's not what J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon said this morning. Take a listen.
It could be a blip. You know, if you're talking about 3 or 4 weeks, it'll be a blip in the housing market. If it went on for a long period of time, it will have a lot of consequences, most of which will be adverse on everybody.
I don't know, Larry. I don't exactly see it as a blip. What about you?
Well, I don't know. I was just interested. He said he had about 115,000 mortgages on file, and he thought he could process them in 3 to 4 weeks. I don't know. He runs J.P. Morgan, and they're a big mortgage holder and a big foreclosure holder, so we'll see. Diana, thank you. Stay with us, please. I want to bring you back in. We got some other people here. Our question tonight, does the foreclosure mess require a nationwide foreclosure moratorium, or can technical miscues actually be solved in a matter of weeks or months, as per Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan? So, here now we have Bill McCollum. He's the Florida State Attorney General. We also have Matt Englett. He's the Managing Partner of KEL Attorneys. Mr. Attorney General, old friend Bill McCollum, thank you for coming on. I want to ask you what you thought about Jamie Dimon's thought that maybe in a month or so, this could be cleared up. Is that at all within the realm of possibility?
Well, I think it's within the realm in terms of getting going again. That's the same thing that we're hearing from Bank of America. I sent letters out to 5 of these service providers yesterday asking to talk with me, and I've already talked with Bank of America. I'm going to talk with J.P. Morgan in the morning. And I gather that they believe, at least at Bank of America, that within 45 days they can clear out their pending cases, those that have been questioned right now, not necessarily the problems that may already be on the books from foreclosures that have already occurred, but going forward. And that's what's important to Florida. You know, we have the largest number of these. We have a huge amount of foreclosures going on here. Our economy is affected by this, Larry, and the title insurers, if they held back right now, it would affect not only these foreclosed properties, but our home sales and resales generally. So it's very important that confidence be restored, trust be restored right away with them, with the courts, and of course with us. And that's the first thing on our minds before we go into the greater details.
All right, let me just follow up. To your knowledge, in the state of Florida, have people been foreclosed who were not in default? This is a very important question. Are there examples where private property rights are being trampled on and foreclosures are occurring even though the homeowner is not in default?
That would be very rare, Larry. I think most of this is technical. We know that we have to protect the property owner. That's our first job. Obviously, there are people who are seeking loan modifications. They're at various stages of foreclosure. We encourage them to seek attorneys, even if it has to be a legal service lawyer. But the reality is that most of this is a backlog of technical concerns. So you have two issues. You're protecting the people who may be going through the foreclosure process, but you're also worried, as we should be, about the people who are going to ultimately wind up with these properties and whether they have good title or not. And that it gets to the third group, actually, and that's the broader marketplace, where if there's no confidence in that process, or you have a lot of bad titles out there, and this kept on going, it would be disastrous for us in recovering in Florida with all the properties we have in the marketplace.
All right, Matt Englett, you're in this game deeply. Now, I want to ask you, would a foreclosure moratorium be a wise thing in Florida or any place else, Matt?
No, it's not a wise thing, and more than that, Larry, it's not necessary. These banks have at their disposal the ability to resolve all of these cases. All of the cases that you're talking about, all the people who are currently in foreclosure, the banks can go to these people and resolve these cases. For the homeowner who can afford to keep their house, modify their mortgage. Give them a decent modification and let them stay in it. If they want to leave the property, then have them give it back to the bank and give them some relief on the deficiency. The power is in the bank's hands to resolve these cases, and quite frankly, I have 10,000 clients that I represent here in the state of Florida. The banks are not very cooperative. They can resolve these cases without having to go back and redo all these foreclosures.
Diana, let me ask you, the issues you raised about the electronic system, the MERS system, that may be the most troubling new development in this. How's that going to get fixed, Diana?
Well, how it's going to get fixed, nobody knows. And it's really an issue that's very different from the borrowers sitting in their homes wondering if they're going to be foreclosed on or not, or if they have the legal rights. This part of it is really not about the borrowers. This part is about the documentation and the investors, which is really a very interesting part of this, because if the documentation wasn't done correctly, these investors could have a case to sue the trusts, that is, the holders of these securities, and say, look, you didn't do the documentation correctly. You never actually had these assets that I took a loss on. So they could sue them and say, look, if I took a loss on these assets that didn't exist because you didn't transfer the titles and the notes and the mortgages correctly, then I shouldn't have to take that loss. You should. And a lot of the legal experts are telling me that we're looking at a long line of lawsuits against the big banks, the trusts even that hold these, which are held by about 5 or 6 different trusts around in the nation. And the legal ramifications of that are going to cause big problems from the banks. Yes, there's the issue with the borrowers, but the bulk of them who couldn't pay the mortgages will have to be worked through the system. This is now moving into an investor bank story.
Matt Englett, is that true from your perspective on the defense side?
No.
Is this going to move into a lot of lawsuits and an investor story?
There is going to be a lot of litigation over this, but I think your reporter's missing the boat on what we're talking about here. What we have here are law firms that represent the banks and the banks themselves submitting fraudulently prepared documents in an effort to speed up the foreclosure process.
Well, I'm not missing the boat on that, sir. I'm just saying that it's a different story. There are two sides to this story. Obviously, that's going to take some working out with the robo-signing, but there are two different stories here.
All right,
they are two different stories, but that's the crucial portion, because keep in mind, Larry, the judges rely on this information to grant judgments against individuals, and that's why they want to make sure that this stuff has been reviewed and that it's accurate and that someone's swearing to it, and we're finding out that none of that happened.
Bill McCollum, I'm going to give you the last word. Can the judges get this done in some sort of rapid, timely sense? Otherwise, this whole market's going to go down in flames. Bill McCollum, last word.
Well, I think they can, as long as the loan service providers, J.P. Morgan and those types, can get their act together and demonstrate this to the judges. And I can tell you the bottom line, too, is that we do have some fraudulent law systems going on here. We have 4 law firms in our state that we think are mills for this, and they may have committed a lot greater fraud than the robo-signing questions. But the issue over the major providers and what's been unearthed with these robo-signings, I think we can work that through, but there's going to be a long-term consequence, and that's why this Attorney General's task force is there, looking back, looking at why this happened, investigating the causes of it, and getting out of it for those that are already foreclosed properties. And I agree with Diana, that's a very serious matter. But the first and foremost thing is, you're absolutely right, Larry, getting the courts, getting the title insurers' confidence back, and getting the process going again, and not having moratorium. We've got to get out of that.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Florida Attorney General Bill McCollum, Matt Englett, and Diana Olick. Thanks. Some breaking news, sending shares of Yahoo skyrocketing in after-hours trading. Sources reporting possible